sheared that ship right in half.
Boom.
It takes a lot of calmness under pressure to steer a ship as bombs are falling all around it and artillery is falling all around it.
Darth Vader when he uses his force push.
Oh yeah.
With the railgun, just pretty cool.
The Navy has the force, for sure.
Hey everybody, I'm Chelby Bragg. I've been in the Army for 10 years. I'm a tank expert.
What's up guys? My name is Max Bloom. I was in the Navy for 14 years. I deployed on the USS Ronald Reagan and the USNS Bridge. I'm an expert at warships, and today we're talking about World of Warships. Let's get into it. All right, so this is the Japanese battleship Yamato. In World War II, biggest battleship ever built. It was a class of ship, but also they had a flagship battleship named the Yamato. And after Pearl Harbor, this ship led the Japanese fleet, wreaking havoc throughout the Pacific as they took over island after island, establishing themselves as the dominant player in the Pacific. So this would be not something you want to come across on the open seas.
Awesome. Hey Max, what size guns are those, dude?
Well, those are 18-inch guns. The rounds coming out of those weighed over 3,000 pounds each. So imagine getting a Volvo shot at you at hundreds of miles an hour. One round hitting in the right spot could sink one of the American ships.
Oh, wow.
So this was a serious force to contend with out there. Those islands out there, what this kind of looks like to me, what this reminds me of is what environment was during the campaign in the Pacific. So while the Navy had fought fronts on the Atlantic, the Pacific is where the Navy really cut its teeth and established itself as the most dominant Navy in the world, the American Navy, by taking on the Japanese in the Pacific. This could be the Philippines or one of the other Pacific islands that the American campaigns, including the Marines, had to fight through to ultimately get to Okinawa in Japan. The ships are using their targeting systems. The Yamato had a really advanced targeting system. A lot of the Japanese naval ships did, and their sailors were very skilled too. One of the things that ended up hurting the Japanese was they lacked the aggression that the US Navy brought to it. And when we look at the US Navy warships, we'll talk about that. But this ship particularly participated in multiple battles in the Pacific, only to eventually be sunk when it was on a suicide mission to Okinawa. Its plan was to sail to Okinawa after being defeated in the Philippines, crash into the beach and create a wall so that the American forces couldn't land on Okinawa. But it never made it because American aircraft destroyed it en route.
Right on.
But until then, this ship could just obliterate almost anything that America had if it had landed with its most powerful guns. It was a bad day.
You said a Volvo being shot at you. I couldn't imagine that. A Volvo just being shot through the sky. You're just looking like, oh my gosh.
So you see this ship sailing in front of the other ship right now?
Right.
This would be an absolutely heroic thing to do. This happened in the Navy. A couple ships come to mind, the Norman Scott and the Laffey, where they planted themselves in between the enemy and the ship that had the best weapons, and they would take the hit so that the ship behind them could keep firing and sacrifice themselves.
Wow.
It actually would be, I don't know if that's what was happening there, but that's a real naval tactic that was happening. So the Montana was designed to combat the Japanese battleships, only they never really came to fruition in that war because in that time, what became the leading Navy ship was the aircraft carrier. We realized that the battle for the sea was owned by the air.
Okay.
And so this ship could have been a game changer in World War II, but it didn't really end up being that way because the aircraft carriers became center point, the focal point for all the campaigns leading up to Japan.
Do you know how many guns were actually placed on the ship?
Between the different types of armament, there would be dozens of guns. I don't know the exact number. There would be dozens of guns and targeting systems.
Wow.
Different ships would have anti-air, anti-ship, or both. Cruisers can have missiles that target land from the sea, long-range missiles. Submarines have long-range missiles. But here what we're seeing is mostly the artillery type weapons that are battling against these other ships as they go around these island chains.
Oh, wow.
What's crazy about the Navy, as this battle's going on, there are hundreds of sailors in the ship doing their jobs who will never even see daylight over the course of this battle.
Because they're just constantly on the go.
Yeah, and somebody in there is getting the food ready. There's all these different jobs. Imagine being an engine man, somebody who works on the propulsion. A round comes in, you're trapped, right there. Okay, this is a great example right here, actually. Here, you see that the American ship is on fire, right?
Right.
But you see that they put the fire out, okay? This is actually not something to take lightly. This is probably the thing that turned the tide of the war in the favor of the Americans. Everybody in the Navy has two jobs. You have your job, cook, engineman, whatever, and you're a firefighter.
I was just about to ask you that. I was like, so potentially, you know, some people that see this video could just be like, hey, I could join the Navy and I can get firefighter training.
At least a week of boot camp for our 9-week cycle of training is dedicated to firefighting. And when you get on board a ship, you get all this extra training that's all dedicated to firefighting and saving the ship. In World War II, our Navy sailed west, and they had the Battle of Coral Sea, the Battle of Midway, the Battle of Samar, all the way out, and this is like going out to Japan. What really made the US Navy able to win that war is that after a battle would take place, the US Navy ships would be ready to fight again immediately.
Right.
The Japanese ships would have to go back to Japan.
Well, 1 for us, 0 for them. So
that's right, 100%.
That's how it is.
That's how it is, and that's how it was. That's really how it was. On board that ship is a death trap. Sailors were getting killed by fire, steam, drowning.
Oh, wow.
After these ships went down, it was pretty brutal. People don't realize the brutality of naval warfare, but there's also etiquette to it too. These ships' commanders would honor each other and see if if a ship's abandoning ship and their sailors are going into the water. Sometimes they would give them the grace and not fire on them any further. Sometimes they would. It was all out war in the Pacific.
So I couldn't, you know, be a captain of the ship and be like, end them all.
To target sailors who've abandoned ship, it kind of be a waste of your ammunition and time.
Got it.
When you're in a larger battle.
Okay.
Once the ship's sinking, you've defeated them. All right. So this is the Mden Ship for Germany.
Okay.
Interesting fact about the Mden. Germany had multiple Mdens.
Wow.
They kept naming these ships Mden. In World War I, there was an Mden. I mean, it doesn't look like the most intimidating ship. So what they would do is they would lower their flag to make themselves seem like they're not a warship. Then when they got within striking range, they would hoist their flag and strike other ships.
Crafty people.
Crafty,
I would say.
But also kind of cowardly.
That's what I would think, because I was gonna say, would that been at the time like against a treaty per se or anything like that?
I don't.
Or like naval etiquette per se?
My international law is not up to par, probably, but my sea lawyer skills, which is what we call in the Navy, are pretty good. So I'm going to say that that's a thumbs down on that.
Okay.
And they would probably, but I mean, they already lost both world wars, so you gotta
think about that.
Got to think about that. So obviously those tactics didn't work.
No. So every ship has a different design, but I don't know. Was Germany into the smokestacks? It looks like, is that like the design they liked on that vehicle? I mean that ship for some reason, because some countries do that, or they have something that they trademark, on their vehicles or flags. And it looks like they like the smokestacks. Yeah, well, you've got ships that run off of different types of propulsion. So you've got coal, steam, and in the U.S. Navy, in modern warfare, we have nuclear. Ooh. So you're not going to see a lot of smoke coming out of a nuclear-powered warship, and those are your aircraft carriers and your submarines. Got it. And the Navy used to do nuclear power for, I think, cruisers as well, but they got away from that. Okay. So now they run off of traditional fuel systems. The Mden's a cruiser, I believe, a German cruiser, so it's not their premier battleship. But Germany also didn't have the best Navy. They're not a sea-going country per se with their Navy. So now they did have their U-boats, which were pretty devastating submarines. And in the Atlantic, they did put up a great fight against the Americans. And a lot of people don't talk about the war in the Atlantic. I think that really goes to show the way that World of Warships was thinking is understanding that the Pacific is what modern naval warfare revolves around. Okay. The battles in the Pacific were the last ship-to-ship real battles that happened. How do you feel about the realism of this? The Mden, by the way, was sunk in 1945 by U.S. bombers. Oh, wow. Realism-wise, naval warfare took place at oftentimes great distances. Okay. And so you're seeing a lot of ships very close together here, going very fast. Everything's happening very fast. The realism of the ship design and the weapon systems and all that is great. Probably less realistic is the pace. Okay. These battles wouldn't happen in 5 minutes. They would happen in 5-8 hours, multiple days sometimes. So wow. I think they do a great job showcasing the capabilities, the design, the look, and the environment. Shimmachi, another Japanese ship. We were talking about how the Yamato was a ship and also a type of ship. Right. The Shimmachi was interesting because it was the only ship of its class. Wow. And it was built to help the Japanese attain full control over the Pacific in World War II. So they never made multiple copies of it, as in they didn't make a 1 or 2, it was just Shimmachi. Yep, and it was out there with devastating torpedo systems and really high speed. So you can kind of see it kicking up a wake there. Right. One thing that they could show, I feel like a little bit better here, is when ships are ripping at this speed, like 40 knots, when they list or turn, that deck could easily end up in the water. So Max, how fast is 40 knots in miles per hour?
A knot is effectively a mile per hour.
Okay.
So you can imagine it, almost 1-to-1. I don't remember exactly what the conversion is, but a knot is basically a mile per hour. A lot of Navy ships can go, 25, 30 plus knots.
Okay.
And when you're going that fast in the water, you really feel it.
You're bouncing.
You are feeling it.
Yeah, I would imagine that because I've been jet skiing before. I've been on a couple of boat rides, but I can just imagine the mass of that ship, and you're going 30, 40 miles per hour, it's insane. You're going 30, 40 miles on a jet ski, it's crazy speed.
Yeah, it's very scary. You'll be on the deck of a ship, and 1 second you're leaning over and you're looking at the water, you can almost touch it, and the next second you lean back and you see nothing but sky.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So I hope your motion sickness is in check, which is probably something they had to deal with in World War II. It's not like they could take a Dramamine or something like that and deal with their motion sickness. They were out there in terrible weather, and you kind of see a little bit of chop there from the wake that I think the rounds are kicking up maybe. But one of the tactics would be to sail into a storm. So if you were trying to break contact, let's say, you can sail into a storm. It affects the ability of the ship to maneuver. It affects the visibility and overall the capability of the ship. So you can break contact by sailing into a storm.
That scene from Pirates of the Caribbean, guys, wasn't actually, too off from the fact that Max just said, you sail into the storm, people don't follow.
Another thing that they got right in Pirates of the Caribbean was our affinity for rum.
What do you guys call it when you guys are, moving forward? Do you guys have certain terms you guys use?
Yeah, so you would say, when you go out to sea, you're underway. When you're steaming, you're going forward. You could turn to port, which is your left. You could turn to starboard, which is your right. Do you guys use port and starboard in the tank?
No, we don't.
One of my favorite naval terms is athwartship,
Athwartship.
which is a imaginary line going down the top and bottom and left and right of the ship. So it's the axes on which the ship turns.
Ah, that's pretty cool.
And of course, scuttlebutt, which is a term in the Navy that's either where you get water from, like a water fountain, or what we call rumors and gossip. So there could be a scuttlebutt going around the ship.
So if someone you don't like, call them a scuttlebug.
And then of course, mid-rats.
Mid-rats.
The most important meal of the day.
Mid-rats and scuttlebutts, that's one to know, everybody. See?
Take it to the bank. UK were naming ships Minotaur all the way back in the 1860s. And they had this one that they were going to deploy in World War II, but they didn't finish it in time. Which is great. The war ended, right? That's a good thing.
Right.
But then it ended up serving just in the fleet, sailing around, providing presence of power, which is one of the Navy's current missions today, which is just being there. Showing that we are still allowed to sail here. If it's international waters, the Navy will go there and will protect that water.
I mean, from the name Minotaur, I think that's Greek mythology, half human bull.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, it was pretty aggressive from you see it. So I mean, maybe the UK thought, hey, we're gonna name it the Minotaur.
Yes.
So we're a show of force.
And you see here, they're sailing out in the cold weather. One of the interesting things about the Navy is being able to sail down to Antarctica or Arctic operations and breaking through ice and sailing your ship right through frozen waters. You'll have icing on your systems, things getting jammed up. You probably have to deal with this in your job too, but they're so robust that they're designed to operate even out there in the freezing cold or when it's 150 degrees outside in the Gulf.
Being inside of any type of vehicle, guys, it's hot. You feel like you're in a hot box. Like just an ice box, imagine. So your AC might not work, your heater may not work. So you just have to, we call it embrace the suck. And it builds character though.
It does. And you see here, a bunch of different ships are targeting this one and they're firing volley after volley and that ship's trying to evade. It takes a lot of calmness under pressure to steer a ship as bombs are falling all around it and artillery is falling all around it. To attack, you want to point your broadside at a ship. To avoid it, you want to point your bow. So you want to go long ways to avoid getting hit because that's your narrowest profile. And there you see some torpedoes in the water, artillery going towards it. And this is terrifying for the sailors on board because all they're doing is they're waiting to either get hit or miss. And as shells start blasting in the water all around it, you kind of can probably feel like your time's about to be up.
So what do you do with a torpedo attack?
Same thing, you can turn away from it, you can turn towards it to basically avoid getting hit by it if you have the ability to see the torpedo. Here you see the ship kind of listening into the water, sinking there, and they'll abandon ship. Sailors who had to abandon ship could be stuck out in the sea for days.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of times they would die from exposure, drowning, or even madness. Sailors would go crazy from dehydration and exposure and combat that sometimes they would even just dive off of their raft and swim down thinking that there was something below the water and they would just never be seen again.
Wow.
I don't think this was ever actually a real ship. I think one thing that this game does, which is kind of cool, is they take ships that served either post-war or were ships that never got to serve at all, and they put them out there and go, what if? You know, what if this ship was in the game? What if they were out to sea at the time?
Maybe they'll have them with like space lasers or something on there.
I'm ready for that. Modern, the newer ships have the rail guns.
Okay.
They even have lasers.
Wow.
There are actual laser weapons that are in play. A lot of them are counter-air, other countermeasures that rely on lasers to either heat up or jam signals or whatever it is.
First time I seen a railgun, I think I was watching Transformers and they're like, hey, radio in, and then boom. I mean, so that's a real gun, that's pretty cool. Because Transformers is a pretty good movie, but
it is.
Some crazy stuff in that movie.
But the greatest Navy movie ever was definitely Battleship with Rihanna.
Oh.
It was I think everyone in the Navy would agree that that's the best one. I'm not an expert on the railgun, but what makes a weapon like the railgun so powerful is it's so simple. What you're talking about is just a giant block of metal moving at unbelievable speeds, which can be like being in an earthquake or a 1,000-pound bomb explosion, just by getting hit with something that has no mechanical parts. It's just a block of metal. You accelerate it to such high speeds that the impact alone is absolutely devastating to whatever it hits.
Sounds like Darth Vader when he uses his force push.
Oh yeah.
With the railgun, just immense force, guys. Yeah. Pretty cool.
The Navy has the force, for sure. For sure. So the Russians were allies in World War II, and they turned into enemies afterwards. One of the interesting things that you don't hear a lot about is the Russian Navy. They even had their own Marines. They had their naval infantry, and they provided great support for supply lines and other ships passing through while World War II was happening.
Okay.
So the Russians actually had an okay Navy and Marine Corps. They were out there battling Japan after World War II even with their Navy. It was a very unsung part of their battle because mostly what you hear about in Russia is the Eastern Front. But they actually had their own naval battles they had to contend with and their beach landings and all that. So you could be sailing maybe right past an enemy and you guys might never even know it.
Oh, wow.
There could be submarines in the water right now and you might never even know it. And you could just never see each other. A lot of naval battles were decided by, I don't want to say luck, but maybe fortune, because it was just fortunate that this person didn't steer 5 degrees starboard or 5 degrees port and they never ran in to the surprise attack or they never saw the surprise attack coming. In the Philippines, the US Navy had a battle group called Taffy 3, and they're legends in the Navy.
Okay.
So they were sailing around the Philippines when they encountered the Yamato, the Japanese ship Yamato, just like they just did and said, oh my God, we're not ready for this. We're sailing into a huge attack and we're not ready for it. And what do? They kind of did what this Russian ship is doing right here and attacked. So the aggressiveness at sea can be the difference between winning and losing a battle. A lot of times it came down to whichever fleet was more aggressive.
So how is it on a ship when you hear, enemy or like a training scenario and you have to hurry up and get spun up? What's it like?
It really depends on what your job is.
Okay.
So what they would call battle stations or general quarters, you man your battle stations. Okay. Depending on what your job is, you could be a machine gunner, or with a lot of these modern weapon systems, you just go to a desk somewhere.
Oh, wow.
For me, when I was on the USS Ronald Reagan, when we went to general quarters and battle stations, I just went to my work center. And we would get in our firefighting gear and get ready to defend the ship.
Oh, wow.
A lot of the direct combat is done either by,
I didn't mean to cut you off, but look.
Sheared that ship right in half.
Boom, it just split, and then that's what's called sheared?
Well, that's how I would describe it.
Okay.
But they separated the bow right off of that thing, and
that doesn't look like a good day.
No, that's a bad day.
That's sinking down.
That's an abandoned ship.
Fast.
So as this would be happening, that ship would be under immense pressure, and there would be basically a suction created in the ocean right there by the ship going down, and nobody's escaping that. That'd be because even if you were to jump overboard right now, you would get sucked in by the forces that
all the water's sucking in.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the displacement.
That's a thing.
And for people on board the ship, the compartments would be flooding with water. In our Navy, you go and you try to shut as many doors as possible to prevent water and fire from spreading.
And what he means by SOPs, guys, everybody uses in the military, standard operating procedures.
That's right. So here we have another American ship, the Des Moines, which if you look here at the Des Moines, it's got a whole supply section on the aft end there, and then guns going up all the way through the front of the ship. Those guns are the fastest set of 8-inch guns that were ever built. So this ship had the fastest firing weapon system of this type of weapon system that was ever built. Now, it served after World War II and ended up being the last ship to focus on traditional guns before the modern military went to missiles. Where you guys use buildings, hills, rocks for cover and concealment, the Navy doesn't have a lot because we're at the open sea, right?
Right.
But what you can use is you can sail around terrain. So they have these rocks in the water there, which actually are kind of common. If you go out to sea and you start to get near land, you'll find random large rocks sticking out of the water. You wouldn't really call them islands, but they are these rock formations. They're not inhabitable or anything, usually just by birds, and they're all covered in poop. And so you would see these things and you can actually use them to hide yourself.
So that's your guys' concealment.
Concealment.
So another thing, I don't know how well this fares, but do you guys have smoke to like for concealment purposes to, you know, get away from other naval ships?
Yeah, the Navy is equipped with a lot of different forms of deception.
Okay.
Smoke can be one of them. There are even marker rounds that you can fire, kind of like smoke grenades, that the Navy has equipped on their weapon systems. One of the downsides of that, though, especially in the modern Navy, such advanced radar and imaging systems.
Got it.
So it's really hard to hide a aircraft carrier, this giant tens of thousands of tons of steel out in the middle of the ocean where there's no cover or anything like that.
Wow.
So being detected by radar is definitely a threat, and you also have aircraft that are searching for you and everything, but as that ship is trying to sail behind the rocks there to not be hit by the Des Moines here, that's actually would be a great tactic because its weapon systems are effectively inoperable against that. They don't have guided missiles.
Right.
All they have is line of sight weapons.
Right.
So now we have over the horizon weapons and all that, but if you just have a line of sight artillery weapon, it's not very helpful. And see how fast those rounds are going in?
Right.
The Des Moines would represent the fastest volley, as you can see it going out there, of any ship that the Navy ever had.
So how long does it take to reload a round for fire?
It can take seconds if the crew is really effective. They can be in there reloading every few seconds.
Wow, sounds like what we do on tanks, everybody. It's got to be under 4 seconds, so I'm pretty sure, you know, the Navy beats it. It's pretty cool.
I don't know if the Navy beats it. 4 seconds is really fast. I don't know what the numbers are, but they're quick.
Nowhere lethal though.
All right. I like this tabletop ship design thing that the game has going on, where you can analyze the ship statistics of speed and ammunition stores and all that. You can see some life rafts over there on the side.
Do you guys have that in the Navy, like a terrain board or something like that to show these things?
So you see how there's an aircraft back there?
Okay.
There's actually something we call the Ouija board.
Okay,
and
Ouija board.
on an aircraft, I'll only speak to the aircraft carrier. The Ouija board is how what they call the air boss, or the person in charge of the flight deck, coordinates all the movement of the airplanes on the flight deck. Okay. So they actually do use small mock-ups and what you might call sand tables in the Army, I think, to control the flight deck and probably do wargaming as well. So the Zhao here is kind of like a imagining of a Japanese cruiser, taking a lot of the best features of other ships and putting them into this ship that's made for this game. The cruisers were fast, agile, they had small guns and torpedoes, and were used to support destroyer missions.
Looks like they have some anti-air on there too.
Those weapons can be used for anti-air or anti-ship. Accuracy by fire, where they just fire a lot and hopefully can defend against air. A lot of these ships in World War II, the Japanese ships, were defeated by air. It was aircraft carrier versus aircraft carrier to decide the fate of the war in the Pacific a lot of times. Most of these ships were left defenseless if they couldn't have their own air force, which Japan basically ran out of air power after Midway, and so they were kind of just sitting ducks for a lot of American air power. Another interesting naval tactic here as they kind of volley at this ship, if they're getting shot at, they wouldn't shoot back at the person shooting at them. It would be like, I have your back, and then you have the guy in front of you's back. And so, you know, you might have somebody targeting you, but you trust that I'm gonna get them before they get you. The Navy was like that too.
Okay, that makes sense, because then if all guns are fixated, the other 3 ships or 3 vehicles, you know, they're gonna be fired on. So therefore, you guys are all, like I call it, my favorite term, ducks in a row, ready for, you know, the kill pretty much. And that's not a good thing. So that's actually a good thing to know and a good tactic that the Navy uses. Despite
the ocean being so vast and you being able to see so far, surprises were happening all the time. So you didn't want to be caught with tunnel vision, as we might say in the Navy. You would have tunnel vision and all be focused on one thing. And when you're like this, and you have your blinders up and you can't see left and right, out of here comes an aircraft carrier, out of here comes a submarine, and your fleet's defeated that easily.
So whenever I play any type of game, any type of war game, the whole team's fixated on one thing, and then you got that one person that comes up takes out the whole team. And then you're all sitting there in the lobby and you're just like, dude, you were supposed to do this. How did we all die? And you know, I play with my military friends, Call of Duty, World of Tanks, and we get on there and we're like, hey, watch rear, watch stairs, you know, and the terminology and lingo just starts, you know, it just goes hand in hand in what we, you know, what we're used to. See it in video games and in real life too, they teach us that, so.
Yeah. Understanding fields of fire and support differentiates winners and losers.
Right.
All right, the Kremlin. Is there a more Russian name than that, honestly?
The Krem.
So this is a Russian battleship. Russia didn't really rely on its battleships in World War II. Like we were talking about earlier, it relied on smaller units and submarines to patrol their seas.
So what's it like walking on top of the deck of a ship?
Being out to sea on a warship and not being in a battle is one of the greatest experiences you'll ever have.
Oh, wow.
The beauty of the open ocean with nothing else around, the starry skies. If you're out on the deck of a ship at night, you've never seen anything so dark. You can see every star in the sky, but at the same time can't see your hand in front of your face.
Oh, wow.
I've actually been so scared on the deck of the aircraft carrier that I just laid on the ground and waited till somebody came out so I could kind of see where the door was.
You're scared, guys.
You were too the first time you were out on an aircraft carrier at night, I'll tell you that. You'll easily walk off the side of it, having no idea what's going on.
If something like that was to happen, what is like a protocol if somebody was man overboard? Or what do they do? Because, you know, they're like certain safety nettings or anything like that?
Some areas might have safety nets, some don't. If somebody does fall overboard, or unfortunately sometimes people even jump, you do a man overboard. And what that means is they started doing accountability of everybody on the ship, and if somebody comes up missing, they assume that person has gone overboard, and they launch helicopters and search boats, and they use other aircraft to try to find that person, but a lot of times you never will be found. You're a small dot in a big ocean. One thing that you saw there is the ships sailing together. So you have a battle group of all different types of ships, and when you're out there and you're with your battle group and you're cruising together, what a sight to behold. I mean, it is incredible. You feel the power and capability of the fleet when you're out there sailing with your entire group.
So I've seen like commercials for the US Navy and they're like that. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Then you see the jets fly by. So you've actually been in a scenario like that, right?
Oh yeah, and it's incredible. It's an experience of a lifetime, for sure.
Say, folks, sounds like, you know, you want that experience.
Accelerate your life.
Perfect.
That was my recruiting slogan. So you see these ships on fire?
Yeah.
This would be terrifying. There are counter-piracy operations and interdiction operations going on all over the world, in Africa and the Gulf specifically. But something like this hasn't happened since World War II. And I can't imagine what those sailors went through. I really got to give it up to the sailors who fought in World War II. In my opinion, unsung heroes of that entire conflict and made tremendous sacrifices. The sailors and the aviators who went through incredibly tough times from Pearl Harbor until Hiroshima and Nagasaki made tremendous sacrifices and fought in battle after battle, went out to sea and stayed there until the end of the war.
So I've seen some of the ships that were like, you know, decommissioned in museums and stuff. Some of the machines are just huge and just like, it like a lot of force it looks like to operate those machines. So I was just like, man, you know, our, you know, grandfathers and uncles, and they operated these vehicles. And I'm just like, yo, like how hard, you know, it was to operate this. And I give it to them, like you said, because I was like, these are some tough people. So
it's incredible. If you think about it, to move an aircraft carrier, what they call turning the screws to move the propellers, it requires nuclear fission. Nuclear explosions to operate an aircraft carrier and to get the aircraft off the deck. If you think about it like that, it's pretty impressive.
I thought you were gonna say there's like 10 people up top cranking
rowing,
on something
just
like this.
rowing.
I was gonna say, hold on.
Yeah. Mission first, sailor always, is what they say in the Navy. Mission first, sailor always. It is when you're out to sea and you're all working together and you put that mission first, you really see what it would be like to say, hey, okay, we're going into this battle, we're doing it together. Hopefully we come out on top. I'm gonna play my small part, and hopefully I'll see you guys on the other side.
Would you ever put a tank on a top deck and fire it?
That's a great idea. I would love to see that. I don't see why not. You know what it kind of reminds me of is we were talking about the Yamato. So their whole plan was to basically become a tank. Right? So in dire straits, nothing is out of question.
Right.
The Yamato was going to sail to Okinawa, crash into the beach, and then fight with its weapons against the Navy as they were coming ashore, the Navy and Marine Corps.
Imagine just tanks just boom, boom. See, that'd be cool, guys.
That's exactly what they would do. Hopefully we never have to do that in California.
Right, yeah, we don't want that in California, but I mean, somewhere else.
Yeah, somewhere else. Watching that, it brought me back to sailing out on the aircraft carrier and on the supply ship out in the Pacific. It was really cool to see. I liked watching the ships sail together. I liked watching specifically the ships maneuver around each other to provide fire support or to shield another ship from incoming. That kind of stuff pays tribute to naval history, and if World of Warships continues to do that, then I think that'd be really great. Thanks for watching another episode of Experts React. My name is Max Bloom. You can find me everywhere at the Scuttlebutt Show.
You want to find me? You can find me on Instagram at mr.cali_400.
Don't forget to follow Experts React on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for watching.
I hear him when you're on the ship. He's like, starboard. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I just heard it, but I was like, I don't know what it exactly means. That's all I was asking. And he cleared it up. Okay, this means that. And yeah, looking forward to this